I'm angry at Jack Dutton for how he keeps failing Elizabeth in 1923 Season 2. Jack Dutton has become one of the more frustrating characters in 1923 Season 2, as I'm annoyed with how frequently he's failed Elizabeth. Darren Mann and Michelle Randolph played Jack and Elizabeth Dutton in 1923's cast, representing a potential future generation for the Yellowstone Ranch. While Season 1 saw their love prosper as they agreed to spend their life together, Season 2 has seen Elizabeth struggle with life on the ranch, especially during the harshness of the winter. 1923 Season 2, Episode 3's ending saw Elizabeth finally declaring that she's had enough of the ranch life after being attacked by a mountain lion and bitten by a rabid wolf in the span of 2 episodes. Both instances might have resulted in her death had she not been saved, and it's understandable that she's not keen on sticking around. The Dutton Ranch is a dangerous place to be, especially when they're at war with villains like Donald Whitfield and Banner Creighton, who plan on ruthlessly taking over. Jack Dutton has sworn his life to Elizabeth, and as much as he truly does love her, it's fair to say his loyalty to the ranch and his family will always take priority. This isn't inherently a bad quality, as it's noble of him to protect his family's legacy. However, in marriage, it's also his responsibility to be with her, and leaving Elizabeth behind for long stretches of time isn't the key to a healthy relationship, especially when she's suffering in his absence. Interestingly, we've seen Spencer Dutton prioritize Alexandra over everything else at times, as he seems to take after his father, James Dutton, more. Jack Dutton's primary role model is Jacob, but Harrison Ford's character is allowed the leisure of being hard-headed, reckless, and independent because Cara Dutton is able to hold her own. Cara Dutton may be able to fend for herself, but Elizabeth wasn't raised in this lifestyle. Jack can't get away with acting like Jacob because his marital dynamic isn't the same. He needs to be more present for his partner. Elizabeth has left Jack with a devastating ultimatum: either leave the ranch behind and join her in Boston, or she goes on without him. While he's declined the option for now, as it wouldn't be unacceptable to leave his family behind in this state, he could join her in the city at a later date after the conflict ends. We know the Dutton line is going to continue to the characters we've seen in Yellowstone, but that still leaves the possibility for 1923's characters to branch out, especially since it seems like Spencer and Alex's son will be the heir. Jack Dutton. Oh, how I wanted to love him. How I wanted to believe he was the kind of man who could make Elizabeth a happy woman, a secure wife, a cherished partner. But week after week in 1923 Season 2, he keeps failing her in ways both big and small, and I am angry. No, scratch that, I am furious. Because Jack Dutton had potential, and now all I see is a man who is too caught up in his family's battles to notice that he is losing the one person who truly needs him. Elizabeth has sacrificed so much for Jack, and yet what has he done for her? He promised her a life, a future, a partnership, and instead he has given her worry, heartbreak, and a front-row seat to his recklessness. Yes, it's the Dutton way to be stubborn, to put pride and duty above all else. But what about love? What about protection? What about the fact that Elizabeth is barely hanging on while Jack charges forward like a bull, blind to the pain he's causing her? Let's start with the biggest heartbreak, the loss of their baby. Elizabeth's miscarriage was devastating, a tragedy that rocked her to her core. And where was Jack? Sure, he was physically present, but was he really there for her? The way he brushed past her grief, the way he let his family's war consume him instead of standing by Elizabeth as she mourned, it was maddening. She needed tenderness, reassurance, someone to remind her that she was more than just a piece in the never-ending battle for the Yellowstone. And Jack? He barely gave her that. Instead, he threw himself into revenge, into proving his strength, as if that could somehow heal the wounds Elizabeth was bearing alone. And then there's the danger. Oh, the constant, looming danger. Jack seems to believe that just because he loves Elizabeth, that's enough to keep her safe. But love isn't enough when bullets are flying, when enemies lurk in every shadow. Love isn't enough when Elizabeth is left home, fearing for Jack's life, wondering if she will once again be left alone in the ashes of another tragedy. She already lost a child. Does Jack not realize how terrifying it must be for her to think she could lose him too? And yet, time and time again, he rides off into the storm without a second thought, leaving Elizabeth to pick up the emotional pieces. And what about their future? Does Jack even consider what Elizabeth wants anymore? She didn't sign up for this. She was a young woman full of dreams, full of hope. She wanted a life of love, a family of stability. Instead, she's living in the middle of a battlefield, with a husband who seems more committed to vengeance than to her well-being. Every time Jack makes another reckless decision, it's like he's choosing the Dutton legacy over Elizabeth. And how much longer will she stand for it? How much more can she take before she realizes that love isn't enough if it comes with so much sacrifice? I keep waiting for Jack to wake up, to see Elizabeth, to truly see her not just as the woman he loves, but as a person who deserves more than to be left behind in the rubble of his family's war. I want him to choose her, to put her first for once. Because if he doesn't, I fear Elizabeth will realize what I already have, that Jack Dutton may love her, but he doesn't truly know how to be her partner. And if he doesn't change, he is going to lose her. So yes, I am angry at Jack Dutton. Angry that he keeps failing Elizabeth. Angry that he can't seem to see what's right in front of him. And most of all, angry that unless he changes, Elizabeth's heartbreak will only continue. And that is something I cannot forgive. As a fan of 1923, I have always been invested in the relationships that drive the Dutton family saga forward. But nothing frustrates me more than watching Jack Dutton continuously fail Elizabeth Strafford in Season 2. Their love story started with such promise. A whirlwind romance filled with passion, loyalty, and a dream of building a life together on the Yellowstone. Yet time and time again, Jack has let Elizabeth down in ways that feel increasingly difficult to excuse. First and foremost, Jack's inability to prioritize Elizabeth over his duties to the Dutton family ranch is exhausting to watch. I understand that being a Dutton man means carrying the weight of responsibility and making sacrifices. But what about Elizabeth? She left behind the comforts of her old life to be with Jack, believing in his promises of devotion and stability. Instead of honoring that commitment, Jack continues to put the ranch above everything else, leaving Elizabeth feeling like an afterthought. Take, for example, the repeated instances where he rides off into danger without considering Elizabeth's feelings. We saw this pattern emerge in Season 1, and it has only gotten worse in Season 2. Jack charges into conflicts, determined to defend his family's land, yet he never stops to think about how his recklessness affects Elizabeth. She is left alone, worrying about whether he will return alive, all while trying to make a home for them in the brutal Montana wilderness. She deserves better than the endless anxiety of loving a man who treats her concerns as secondary. And let's talk about his failure to emotionally support her. Elizabeth has endured significant hardships, and yet Jack always seems to fall short when it comes to truly being there for her. The miscarriage she suffered was one of the most devastating moments of their relationship. And instead of offering her unwavering comfort, Jack struggled to be present in the way she needed. His grief over losing their child was understandable, but Elizabeth needed a partner who could hold her, listen to her, and reassure her that they would get through it together. Instead, she was left feeling isolated in her pain, as Jack remained more focused on what the loss meant for their future as ranchers, rather than what it meant for their relationship as a couple.